The neon of Tokyo's Kabukicho district reflected in the puddles like spilled oil paints, chaotic and bright. But 5 blocks away, in an older, quieter district of Akasaka, the light was different. It filtered softly through the rice paper screens of the Jade branch, an exclusive antique shop specializing in Meiji-era weaponry and silk. This was the hive of the Kamakiri-kai, the praying Mantis society. In the Japanese underworld, they were spoken of in hushed tones, usually by powerful men, realizing too late that their scotch tasted strange, or that the beautiful woman straightening their tie had just slipped a blade between their ribs. They were a kumi clan, comprised entirely of women, operating under the radar of the massive, sprawling, male-dominated syndicates. The Kumicho, boss of the Mantis, was Renko Saito. To the outside world, she was a severe, elegant woman in her late 40s with an appraiser's sharp eye. To the underworld, she was the Steel Orchid. Renko sat in the back room of the shop, kneeling on a tatami mat. Before her sat a porcelain bowl filled with water. She was practicing ikebana, the art of flower arrangement. Her movements were glacial, deliberate. She held a single thorny stem, contemplating its angle. The shoji screen slid open noiselessly. Yuki, her youngest lieutenant, bowed low until her forehead touched the mat. Kumicho, a message from the Nishimura Gumi. Renko didn't turn. Speak. Takeshi Nishimura demands 70% of the profits from the new Hostess Club circuit in Roppongi. He says, women shouldn't handle such serious coin. He gave us 24 hours to comply, or he will burn the Jade branch down with us inside. Renko finally placed the stem into the Kenzen holder within the bowl. It stood perfectly straight, a solitary spike amid softer blossoms. Takeshi, Renko mused, her voice like crushed velvet. A wild boar in a china shop. He mistakes noise for power. He has 50 men, Kumicho, heavily armed. They are occupying the Red Dragon Mahjong parlor tonight, celebrating their demand. Yuki's voice held a tremor of anxiety. The Kamakiri-kai had only 12 active members. Renko turned slowly, her eyes, dark and unreadable, fixed on her young subordinate. Do you know why we adopted the Mantis as our sigil, Yuki? Because it strikes fast, Kumicho? No, because it knows how to stay perfectly still. The boar charges and tires itself. The Mantis waits until the prey steps into the kill zone. Takeshi has stepped in. That night, the Red Dragon parlor was a haze of cigarette smoke and the clatter of tiles. Takeshi Nishimura, a mountain of a man with tattoos spilling past his cuffs, roared with laughter, slamming down a winning hand. His men were drunk on sake and arrogance. They were the masters of this city. They broke things, and people paid them to stop. It was a simple ecosystem. They didn't notice the service staff changing shifts. The new waitresses moved through the smoky room with fluid grace. They wore traditional green silk kimonos, cinched tight at the waist. Their faces were painted in the pale, detached style of geisha, rendering them anonymous, almost doll-like. One waitress, her movements lighter than air, approached Takeshi's high-stakes table to refill glasses. It was Renko. Though beneath the makeup, Takeshi saw only a servant. He grabbed her wrist, spilling sake. "Hey, you're new, pretty thing. Tell your mama-san I want to buy your time later." Renko didn't pull away. She didn't even blink. The stillness in the noisy room was absolute. A vacuum centered on her demeanor. "My time is very expensive, Nishimura-san," she whispered. He laughed, releasing her to grab his drink. "I own this district. I can afford anything." Renko bowed and retreated to the shadows near the kitchen entrance. She caught the eye of Yuki, who was serving a table of guards near the door. She gave a nod so slight it was almost imagined. The attack did not begin with a shout. It began with darkness. Yuki severed the main power line in the back hallway. The red dragon plunged into pitch blackness, save for the glowing embers of cigarettes and the faint streetlights bleeding through the high windows. Confusion erupted. Chairs scraped. Men shouted for lights. Guns were drawn defensively. Then came the sound, a collective, silken shh, as 12 hidden blades were drawn simultaneously from the folds of green kimonos. The Kamakiri-kai moved. They didn't brawl. Brawling was for boors. They operated like surgeons in the dark. They knew the layout of the room perfectly. They had memorized it weeks ago. A guard by the door felt a sudden, icy sting in his neck and collapsed without a sound. Yuki catching him before he hit the floor. At the main table, Takeshi was fumbling for his lighter. To be continued. The flame flared to life, illuminating a porcelain face inches from his own. Renko was no longer serving. She moved with blinding speed. Her left hand, rigid as an iron bar, struck his forearm in a nerve cluster, numbing his gun hand instantly. Before he could even inhale to scream, her right hand moved. She didn't use a large katana. The Kamakiri favored the Aikuchi, a 6-inch dagger with no guard, easily concealed in a sleeve. The blade flashed in the lighter's flame. It didn't go for the heart. It went for the throat, severing the vocal cords and the carotid in one horizontal slice. Takeshi Nishimura's eyes went wide. He tried to roar, but only a wet hiss escaped. He slumped onto the mahjong table, scattering the tiles. The entire engagement lasted perhaps 20 seconds. "Lights," Renko commanded calmly into the darkness. The emergency lights flickered on, bathing the scene in a sickly yellow glow. 50 men stood blinking, confused. 10 of their number were on the floor, bleeding out or unconscious from precise strikes. At the center table, their oyabun, the invincible boar, lay dead amidst his winnings. Standing over him was Renko, slipping a bloodied Aikuchi back into her sleeve with a snap of silk. The 11 other women of the Kamakiri-kai stood frozen around the room, blades hidden again, hands clasped politely in front of them as if waiting for an order. The remaining Nishimura men looked at their fallen leader, then at the silent women in green. The realization hit them like a physical blow. They weren't outnumbered. They were outclassed. The hostess circuit remains under my care, Renko said. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the terrified silence, it sounded like thunder. Anyone who wishes to dispute this may step forward. No one moved. The boar was dead. The mantises were waiting. "Clean this up," Renko said to the highest-ranking survivor, "and tell the other families what you saw tonight. Tell them the Jade branch has thorns." The next morning, the air in the Jade branch was cool and smelled faintly of jasmine incense. Renko sat before her flower arrangement. She contemplated the single, aggressive spike she had placed the day before. She picked up a small, delicate white lily and placed it next to the thorn, softening the arrangement, bringing back the balance. Yuki entered quietly, placing a cup of tea near Renko's elbow. The young woman's hands were steady today. "The Nishimura clan has dissolved, Kumicho," Yuki reported softly. "Their territory is fracturing. The other syndicates are fighting over the scraps. None have approached the Roppongi district." Renko nodded slowly, her eyes on the flowers. "Stillness, Yuki," Renko murmured, taking a sip of the tea. "It is the loudest sound in the world if you know how to listen."